Nearly 2.5 million people is expected to visit Iceland in 2025, which is nearly double compared to numbers from 2015. And so Iceland's popularity as a travel destination has been definitely on the rise for the last couple of years. And while some say that we are past the good old days and Iceland has already turned into just another spoiled touristy destination, the more optimistic opinions suggest that we are actually right now entering the best time to visit this subarctic paradise. And so which one is it? Could this year be your last best bet to experience this wild side of Iceland, or is it already too late? Well, this video should help to answer exactly that. And if you've been thinking about visiting Iceland for a while now, then I think you'll definitely want to stick around. Let's first begin with some ugly facts, which honestly nobody really wants to hear, but every traveler should probably know about. To start with, there is a question: is Iceland already too crowded? And the answer is yes, but it really depends. To compare some numbers, in 2015 around 1.3 million people visited Iceland, while in 2023 total number was around 2.1 million, which is a 62% increase. And honestly, you can really see it, and here is how it changes some places. This here is me in September in 2015 at Gullfoss waterfall, and this video here was taken on the same place in September, but last year 2023. And so yes, I definitely noticed that there are more people around here, especially during the summer months. But still, for me personally, it was more of a gradual change, and I guess it must be really different for somebody who was born and raised here and experienced Iceland basically before tourism exploded. And before we move on to the next point, I just want to mention that it is not like that everywhere on the island, but this is something that I'll get to later in the video. Now the next thing that I have to mention are the prices. For most of the people, Iceland has always been quite an expensive place to travel, and sadly it is not getting any better. During last couple of years, I have seen the prices go up on all goods, services and well, basically everything. And also, by the look of things, I don't really see the inflation slowing down anytime soon. And it isn't that just the prices are rising, but what I've also noticed is that some of the things that used to be for free, now you have to pay for. And we can take parking spots at some of the popular places as an example. At many of these places that I used to visit for free just a few years ago, you now have to pay for anywhere between 8 to 1200 Icelandic kronas. And with every year, the list of the places that you have to pay to access is growing, which can definitely also add up on the total cost for your trip. And so where am I going with this? Well, probably the longer you wait to visit Iceland, the more expensive it is likely going to become. But let's just say that you don't really care about none of that, and the cost of your trip doesn't really change much. But this next thing could give you a really good reason to visit Iceland rather sooner than later. So Iceland is mainly known for its natural beauty, and if you are traveling here, you most likely expect to see as little of a human intervention as possible, right? But sadly, because of the growing number of people visiting certain places, government really needs to be taking certain precautions to protect them. And that leads to building concrete paths, putting up ropes, rails and signs everywhere. And even though this is necessary to protect those places, and I honestly think that they are doing a good job, it still can change the overall feel of the place. Like, it personally always gives me this zoo feeling, and I always find it a little bit strange to be observing nature, from behind the rails and standing on a concrete patio. And of course, these are completely normal precautions for the places where the tourism is growing, and probably if you are coming here from the city, you won't even notice things like that. But personally for me, I've seen those changes, and these places are just never the same anymore. And sadly, as the time goes on, we are seeing more and more places undergoing the same changes. And that's why I personally don't go to these places that often anymore. Because no matter how breathtaking they are, they just feel somewhat spoiled. But what does it mean for you as a traveler? And honestly, I think that the sooner you visit Iceland, more likely you are still to witness this unchanged beauty of some places. Okay, now let's take a look at the topic of tourists versus locals. And here I have some good news, but also some bad news. The good news is that most of the Icelandic people that you will meet here are going to be likely very friendly and welcoming to tourists. And you might also find that a lot of them have this very laid-back mood, at least compared to what you might be used to, and I think that's something that's always a breeze of a fresh air, especially nowadays. But let's also mention the bad news. With more people traveling here, always increases the chance of finding a couple of idiots ruining the reputation for the rest of the tourists. People are camping on private land, shitting right next to the road, driving off-road and more. And there is even a Facebook page now dedicated to a stupid behavior of tourists. And I'll leave a link in the description of the video so you can check it out later. And so you can imagine that sadly some of the locals are starting to be a little bit annoyed of tourists, and their attitude towards them might be a little bit different compared to what it used to be back in the day. And if this is going to change for worse or for the better, I guess there is no way of telling, and we'll probably have to wait and see how things will develop. And a lot of it is honestly just a common sense, but just remember to be kind, respect the nature and the signs. And I mean, yeah, I understand, following rules, signs and all that can be very annoying, and I mean, I personally hate it too, but if you imagine the situation that you are on some crowded place, and then you'll be the first person who will cross that rope or fence or whatever, then you can imagine how easy it is to trigger this domino effect where everybody else will simply follow you. And if you decide to do that, just remember that you might always end up on that Facebook page as a bad example. So all of these are the things that, in my opinion, are changing for worse. And so if you always wanted to visit Iceland, then I think that this year is the last best year to experience what soon will be considered good old days of traveling to Iceland. But then you could argue that if you look at it from the distance, so was the last year and all those years before that. But what about the bright side of tourism? And what if you don't visit Iceland now? What are some positive things that you might expect to see in the future? With every year, there are more and more free resources and online forums basically in every single language, which you can take inspiration from, and that will help you to plan your trip with ease. And if you are willing to invest some extra money and you also want to save a ton of your time, you can always hire a local like me who can basically help you create a custom itinerary. And that will basically make sure that your trip to Iceland will become a stress-free and premium experience. But also, if you are on the budget and you want to save some money, then there is so many ways that you can do that nowadays. And I mean, you can, for example, take advantage of some of the coupons that I have on my website, and I'll link it in the description below so you can check it out later. And another big plus of growing tourism in Iceland is that there's never been so many choices of amazing places to stay. And if you look at Airbnb or Booking, you will find hundreds of accommodations that fit every budget. Everything from hostels, guest houses to beautiful hotels, glamping spots and cozy cabins. And same goes for the activities. It's basically never been easier to experience Iceland through outdoors, and I mean, there are so many options now. You can choose nearly any water sport you can think of. You can go skiing, snowmobiling, glacier hiking, whale watching, mountain biking, explore ice caves, go ride ATVs, take super jeep tours, or even explore Iceland from the air via helicopter tours. And the list goes on, and I think that this is something that I'll probably have to make a separate video about. But anyway, I think that this is a great way to experience Iceland and probably something that you couldn't do on your own. And in my opinion, this will create some amazing memories too. Another good thing about traveling to Iceland right now or in the near future is that like 90% of people speak pretty good English. And honestly, you don't even have to ask a person if they speak English anymore, because unless it is a very old person, then the chances are that they are going to at least understand everything you say. And you will also notice that most of the signs here are not just in Icelandic, but also in English. And another thing that I've been also noticing lately is that it seems like a lot of people are now choosing to spend more and more time in less traveled parts of Iceland, which could be a good thing and something that in long term could help to take some of the crazy traffic from the south and help to spread it around the island more evenly. But this is just my prediction and we'll have to see about that. And so as you can see, Iceland is definitely changing, and there are both positive and negative sides of it. And I think that if you really want to avoid the negative sides, then in my opinion you should probably travel to Iceland in the near future. But otherwise, I strongly disagree with the opinion of some people who say that it is already too late to travel to Iceland and experience the wild side of it just because it's too busy. There are so many places around the island where even during the peak season you could be the only person there. You will just have to do a better research and go a little bit off the beaten path. And if you're wondering how much money will you really need for a trip to Iceland, then I recently made this video right here and I hope to see you there.